All right, we're back another Saturday on our Black Media Network, and we got our two co-hosts, and we have our other co-host that I think she was in Alaska and she just came back, and so welcome back, Miss Newbie.
Thank you so much.
I don't know
How
about
is that in a
Alaska,
nice
but she
world?
was. I don't know about Alaska, but she sure was somewhere frozen.
They
I
said
was, I
she was in
was,
Germany with Sarah Palin.
I unfortunately had COVID, and I was out for a while, and yeah, I'm just now able to really get into the swing of things again. So I'm happy to be back.
Good to have
Thank
you
y'all
back.
for having me.
And what's going on in Port Wentworth, Julius?
Everything is still the same. Ain't nothing changed. We trying to
Oh
make it
wow.
do what it do out this way.
Okay. All right. But I think Sabrina, we got two topics today, but the headline, I guess, we'll talk about later if y'all want. But looking at specifically community growth and using Chatham County as an example, you're right next door to in a neighboring county, so we'd love to hear that. But I know
Hmm.
Julius, you had another topic you want to share as well today.
Who?
What's your second one? Are you muted?
Who wanted to share a second topic?
I thought you had a second topic.
That's
Oh, okay,
Sabrina's
well,
topic.
oh,
That's
well,
Sabrina's
Sabrina,
second
please share
topic.
your topic. Let's start with that.
Um, I thought we should talk about economics, and
Okay.
how economic plays a role in politics and why that's so important to the community, especially Southern Georgia, and to the African American community.
Yeah, yeah. You know,
I think that's a conversation that should happen every week.
yeah. We'll start it off. I mean, what's in your mind? Kind of what prompted that, or what's your thoughts behind it?
Well, what prompted that is everything, and from the elections to the lack that we are currently experiencing from COVID to monkeypox to everything. It's all kind of like a one big bowl of gumbo that's affected us in such a way. But it shouldn't be surprising that these things are affecting us, because before they affected us, we were still in this position, this position of lack. Now, we hear people say, oh, it's about to get worse. It's devastating. It's been devastating. I'm so sorry. It's been devastating to the Black community. It's been devastating to poor people. It's been devastating to people who are taking money to pay Paul. It has just been devastating. So how do we move around that? How do we get around those things? And how do we begin to get to a better place of where we're not having this conversation 5 years down the road?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think what jumped kind of a thought that went through my head is when you said that we, as a community, our community has been in a deficiency stage from kind of the beginning, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think back years ago when slavery was a thing and how oppression has crafted and really shaped the African American community, unfortunately, to the point now where you fast forward a few decades later than that, and you have our people who are going to school with less than, using handed down books, so forth and so on. To now we get to the modern era, and we have some who think they made it right, but then we
Right.
have those of us who just really, for whatever reason, systematically are and still at the same disadvantage stage. It really intrigues me. One of the things my dad used to do when he would carry communion to the hospitals when I was younger, and he part of his prayer was, God put enough resources for all of us if we only shared. And I don't think that communicates at all communities. I think in our community, we have, from what I've seen in this particular local community, is a very, if I don't have it, you don't need it either. Or if you have something, you must be quote unquote better. You think you're better than number of narratives around it. But yeah, we've got to collectively understand how do we advocate and receive and earn, not earn, we've already earned reparations, but then how do we build a community that's supporting us?
Well, Robert, and you mentioned something a minute ago about slavery. We are still in slavery. It's just a mental state that we're in. And we don't understand that it is incumbent upon us as a people to unite. Everybody on this planet is united except the black man. Um, and so until we understand our power, until we understand that we can do things together and make more of something when we unite, then we're going to continue to be in this same condition that we're in. We see everybody in every community, uh, racial community, uh, they pool their money, they pool their resources, they meet and they organize. We don't. These, it's been a plan for a long time, and y'all hear me talk about it all the time, to keep us divided. As long as we're divided, somebody got to be the workers, somebody got to be the slaves, I guess. So they figured, we might as well keep them in that state. And until we realize that we have power, until we realize that once we get together and we unite, um, uh, it's going to be like that for a while.
But it's interesting you say that, because when you said that, Julius, I was thinking the African American community or the black community has been the only race of people from my perspective right now that has it's been calculatedly, that's not even a word, but the system of the strategy of dividing was very calculated. Why did it take me that long to think of that phrase? But anyway, but it sounded good. Really. But yeah. So you think back when our ancestors were on the coast of Africa, and you have this guy float over and say, "Hey, I can buy your people," blah blah blah. That right there, that in itself was a calculated move. And then you come over here now, we're in a modern day age where we think we have young people who don't understand the real seriousness of killing one another. And you don't really see that in some other communities. You look at one of my favorite cultures is the Native culture, and how collectively they haven't even overcome trauma, but the resiliency and community that they still build, even though there are challenges within the community. There are elders and youth or whoever going through issues, and they rally around that. I don't know how we get back to that, but we've got to figure that out, because the Black community is the only community that I can see that has been divided on purpose and has not figured out how do we resolve that and move beyond.
You make a valid point, RGB, but I just want to remind you that originally we had in the Native American culture something called eye for an eye. You take one out of my people, I'm taking somebody from yours. Mm-hmm. But after, basically genocide of an entire race of people, that required people to come together and become peaceful. But originally, it wasn't so peaceful even before colonization happened in the U.S. Not to negate what you said, but just
no. I'm glad you had that. Yeah.
Well, Sabrina? I think right now we have there are Native American representatives, social representatives, and community influencers that are urging the Black community to, culminate with them to get our message across. But here's the thing: let's stay where we are. Let's stay where we are with the Black community. First of all, before we begin to have these conversations about what can we do, we know what we need to do. I mean, we do. We can't say we don't, because we do. We know we want better. We know that we want a better life. We want better jobs. We want equity. We want, do we want equality? That's another topic for another day. But if we have equity, we can really do things within our community. So let's take equity, that piece right there. If we take equity and we give everyone hey, honey, come on. If we give everyone my granddaughter just came in, she wants to be on camera. It's just like, what are you doing?
You look at Julia's face. Give me that eye look.
Yeah, she's like basically.
I'm trying to tell you now. You want him out in Liberty County now. I'm just you know.
We're gonna have a kids show where everybody can bring their kids on
He's sliding on another note.
This is my granddaughter
I don't care.
Chastity, and I want to just say what I'm sharing with my grandchildren. You know, a big part of what I do is for my grandchildren. I want them to see me in action. I want them to see that I am putting things in place for them. I've already started telling my daughter-in-laws who's going to take my place in different parts of our businesses and what we've created as a family. Because in order to grow, we have to pass these things down, these teachings down to our community, our family. So this is my granddaughter, and she's very strong personality, and she's going to be taking over something, and in the family, we just don't know what yet. But I have my daughter-in-laws; they're all in place to take over a facet of our company. We have one that's in politics, grooming for politics. We have one that's a business mind, and we have one that is into, cooking and into the Creole culture and different things like that. So it's important to pass those lessons down. But let's go back to equity. If we take a little piece of equity and give it to the community, to the Black community, and I ask each of you, what would you do with your piece of equity? What would you say?
Phew, that's a big one. Y'all start first. Y'all wrote that thing down like it's a test question too. Look at them. They really think.
Oh no, something else.
I first want to define what equity is for some people that are like, well, I've heard this word. I don't know what it is. So equity is defined as the quality of being fair and impartial is the first definition. And 2, the value of the shares issued by a company. I think we're going with the first definition.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we have equity, then we truthfully have equality. But the monetary part of equity is the big piece, because so many of us, and I say us because I'm an African-American woman, and I don't even want to say I'm an African-American woman. This may upset some people. I'm a Black woman. I'm not subclass. I'm an American. But none of us are subclass. I was born here. My ancestry is from Africa. So yeah, let's just go with that. Okay. So why should I not be given equal parts to my fellow Americans? Native Americans were able to accumulate land. They were able to structure policies that were able to help them. They were able to culminate and basically bring people to the table that will represent their best interests. Every other group of people in America has been able to do this. So why hasn't the Black community?
Well, but I'm actually a question. You know what? 2 parts of that. Oh Lord, him and this music, Jesus. I would say, wow, what would I do with that? I think some people would say what you're talking about is socialism, which I think is a good thing. Somebody's going to use that quote one day. But I think at the end of the day, you think about all the money is on this earth, all the resources on this earth, and that 1%, for example, in the United States, 1% of a group of people own the mass majority of resources financially. That's crazy. And it blows my mind, even when I think about that part and the question you presented, and that we're sending millions of dollars across to the Ukraine. And I love Ukraine. That's wonderful. We got folk around here hungry, don't have a house. That's crazy to me. And so I don't even think our own government, our own leaders understand the question you presented. But part 2 of what you said too, I want to share. I think what you talked about earlier with generational wealth, generational planning is the first step for the community. I think families need to do more of that. The reason I thought about it some years ago is because I have an uncle who thinks like that. And, when you don't have children like myself, you got to figure out, well, where are things going to go? And a big part of our family is certain things need to remain in the family. It's just a thing.
Right.
So I think we start there. I think that would be a great part of the community trying to have that step forward to being more cohesive.
Well, also, we don't think in generational wealth terms as Black people. We don't. The thing is, we have to start thinking like that. There is no generational wealth for us to pass down unless you're super rich right now, and we don't plan to do that. And the thing is to have a plan. Everything that I do is a plan that I know that I'm not going to be here long.
Right.
If I'm here another 40 years, I kiss the ground.
Right.
You know, I'll make it to 60. You know,
I was like, wait,
y'all can't count. So y'all went to
they didn't catch it either. I was like,
all y'all went
okay.
to high schools. Anyway, I'm only 20. So if I make it another 40 years, then that's great. But my kids and grandkids can have something to leave, and that's something to live off of. And that's what other races do. They leave that for their kids. But see, they have us brainwashed that it's all about us and it's all about now. And we have to understand that it's not about now. We do what we can in this present world, in our present tense, so that we can leave something for the future of our legacy. We can leave a legacy for our future that's behind us. Everything I do is for my grandkids. I know, everything that I do, I know that I got to leave it to somebody.
Right.
Yeah. Let me present this, Sabrina, because it's, do you all feel, and this is from multiple communities of color, but particular African-American culture, do you think faith and religion have impacted the community in a detrimental way? And I say that because I had a chance a few years ago to go to some colleagues over in Muslim majority countries. And the one thing I will tell you about Islam is it's a very group, go to the Quran. What does the Quran say about this communal type of living? So it's not individualistic like we do in the United States. It's not what about I want. It's about what does the Quran say? What does, how will this impact the community? Do you think, going back to slavery, that the faith and the religion that we were taught has been a detriment to the community?
I'm going to address this first. When I first went to college 2 years ago, when I was only 16, I'm going to pull off a
all right.
No, when I first went to college, which was Grambling State University, I was first introduced to Black history and what it really was, what it really meant. At the time, as a Southern Baptist young Black woman, I had no clue what these folks were talking about. I thought they were crazy. They were making up these extremes. And until, I evolved, I grew, I aged, I became aware. And I don't want to use the term woke because I think people have taken that and made that a negative. But I became conscious of what our history is. And I do believe that the Black church served a purpose at the beginning, because that was the place of resource, information, secret meetings. That was a place of resource for us, we needed that at the time. However, do I believe that it has impeded our growth? I do believe it in a lot of ways, because, one of the things that I love, one of the phrases I love most is from Fannie Lou Hamer, where she says, you can pray until you faint, but until you get up and move your feet, God ain't gonna do nothing about it. Okay? So one of the things that I do believe in prayer, but I believe in faith and work. You have to put that faith to work, and you have to get mobile and work. Whereas some people believe that, they'll say, well, just pray about it. I'm sorry, prayer alone is not going to turn that wheel to get us to a better tomorrow. We have to work as a community, and we have to understand that there is a place of understanding where the Black church can still survive and we can still evolve on a consistent basis. And I'm talking about for generations to come. And we can basically incorporate our original faith, spirituality into what we do and what we become, and how we share that with our children, our grandchildren, and how they keep that continuously up, and we can progressively move. But yeah, to answer your question, I do believe that we've been impeded by religion. I won't necessarily say it's the Black church. I will say it's religion.
So I want to bring up a point. The term that we use at Clark Atlanta is something that I learned in my urban demography class. Dr. Terry Platt, the professor, are talking about upward mobility. The difference, if we were looking at a case study between LA, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Miami, and DC, and made that relevant to Georgia, we're looking at and talking about the commerce power and the ability for that generational wealth to transform, creating access points for first, second, third, and fourth generation Americans. In this perspective, you've got Asian Americans that are quickly jumping here, coming in as first and second generation Americans, to be able to attain a higher level of upward mobility, to whereas Black folks are still struggling as fourth, fifth generation Americans to not be able to bridge the equity gap. And so that is a big deal. The other point I want to make is I just watched this phenomenal film called Sweetness in the Belly, and it was talking about the military coups in Ethiopia in the 1970s. Like, we give so much money to Ukraine, but really we should be looking at what countries are being hurt in Africa, and we have exchanges with that we should be giving money to, not just like a white country that, I mean, I hate what's going on over there, but there's real stuff going on in Africa that we can benefit from that exchange, as you know, supporting countries where we may want to travel. Our generations of kids may want to travel and be able to help them. Anyway, those are just some points.
Yeah.
Well, I want to speak to that in regards to upward mobility, whereas AKA evolution. One of the things that I know and I have connections with is African kings and business leaders, and we're working with them. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about us as American Black community. When I first had this opportunity, huge opportunity that came about in Ghana, Nigeria, and a couple of other places in Africa, I did reach out to several African Americans and say, I need you to be on this call. There's a lot of opportunity right here, monetary opportunity. And when people understood that you have to have money to make money, they basically bought out. Now, this money wasn't going to me. The money was for you, or to the people, for the people who were investing in order to get their return. They wouldn't do it. So when this thing popped, which was the marijuana distribution growth, which had just been passed. Yes, cannabis. I don't want to make anybody afraid, but cannabis. When they legalized cannabis in Ghana in 2021, people aren't keeping up with that type of stuff. But see, I am, because I knew here in Georgia, Black people were limited in getting into the marijuana or marijuana production, the cannabis production, the hemp production. We have been limited. So there was an opportunity, but when I presented the opportunity, the people were like too afraid or too dismissive of the opportunity and didn't take it. They didn't invest in it. So when this opportunity popped and the returns started to come in for those who did take in those opportunities, the first thing that I was asked, because I put pictures on my Facebook to show this is happening, and I'm like, you're never going to have to work another day in your life unless you want to. I got so many questions from people. Why didn't you tell me?
I was about to ask you next.
But you know what? I could not, and let's logically look at this. I could not individually pick up the phone and call everyone. So I use my social media platform as an avenue of information. So I put it on, not only on the Chamber's page, but my personal page. I put it everywhere. And people still did not engage, because you know why? They were afraid to spend the money, or they thought the money was coming to me, or they thought the money was coming to whomever. We have
And
to stop doing that.
well, and let's be
Exactly.
real. Our community was not taught to invest. Like, I talked with before Alzheimer's, had a lot of conversations with my mother about, when they were younger, her brother, who's a big time real estate person out in Arizona, he told them, we need to do this. They were afraid. This is not something we are used to. This is not something we've seen before. Our parents and grandparents didn't do this, so this is scary. You gotta remember, our communities have limited resources. So you want me to put a chunk of my money that I don't know about, and I ain't never invested for. I don't know about this investment thing. You see what I'm saying? So even me, I'm a high risk taker with finances. So to me, it's like, let's do it.
I hear what you're saying, but like, we can't keep talking about what didn't happen and start looking about, okay, where are we gonna, as Dolly Parton says, poop or get off the toilet. Like, let's move forward and see how we can go forward and quit looking backwards why we didn't do it. Let's
No, I agree.
Do the damn thing.
No, I agree with you. It's like voting. We've got to educate people on the why and how does it impact you. I agree with you though.
And here's another thing too, and I agree with Carrie. One, we tend to make up excuses as to why we don't engage. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because of that. I don't, I sit down. We all have access points to dig a little bit deeper into what is true, what is not true, what is a rumor, what is just something that's made up. People tend to want to not do that. I do that. I do my research. Because I don't want to be held personally responsible for you giving me your last $5 when that's all you had. So before I put out any information, I am going to make sure that I've done my due diligence and everything has come out to be a real opportunity. One of the things we have to stop doing is basically looking for the next entity to come about to give us another new opportunity. We haven't vetted these entities. We don't know if these entities are real. We don't know why. How did you become this entity? We don't do any background. Show me what you have established for yourself as the head of this money-making entity. So I can invest in it too. We have to know what is real and what is fake. And this is how we get caught up in these, what do they call it? Ponzi schemes.
But Sabrina,
yes.
I agree with you to some degree, but we also have to understand that we have to take those risks. I have a quote here on my wall that says, what an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a person who risks their own money for freedom rather than exchanging their freedom for money. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in saying this, we have to say, there is no head guy that we gonna mistrust. We should make our own organizations, pool our own monies, and do those things that are necessary to build our communities and to build generational wealth. We have certain vehicles here. We have vehicles set up to do that, but we are not utilizing them. We have people in positions to get these things done, but we're not utilizing them. Ivory Bay is a great example. Right now,
exactly.
Some thought instead of putting it in motion.
No, Ivory Bay is actually a partner with me on things that they just don't talk about. But let me say this to you.
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
I am an Ivory Bay fan.
Right.
I love Ivory Bay and the concept of what it is supposed to be doing. But for 4 years, Ivory Bay has done nothing. Don't tell me Ivory Bay is doing anything. I love Ivory Bay. I love the person who brought Ivory Bay up and the person who's running it now. But without action, it's like they're praying without working. There got to be some work done. Ivory Bay is a vehicle that we all can use to get some generational wealth and to build things within our own community. But we got to stop just talking about it.
So let me ask you this. What other entity do you know of that equates to an Ivory Bay that is doing stuff and getting stuff done?
None.
Not in the
Because
Black
we
community.
don't want to move. There is
That
no
is not
movement.
true. That is
Okay,
not true.
Okay,
That is
okay,
not
what?
true.
That low country, the Minority Chamber of Commerce.
That exactly. Because let me
Hey, I asked
explain.
you for a $50,000 loan. I ain't got yet.
Hey, you did not do the paperwork.
Now
You
the
want
truth
to do
comes
the
out, right?
paperwork. Look, when you want me to do your work, that means you really don't want it. But let me explain to you. That is not true. It took me when I first started, and I have to say this because I need people to understand, for Black entities, it is extremely hard to get the Black community to buy and trust into it, because what they know to be a viable thing, if that's such a word for this particular subject, they trust that thing. And that thing is not viable. It's not real. It does nothing to help them. So meanwhile, I'm consistent. Just because it's not being shared, and that's one of the things that I did pull away from sharing so much on social media, because one of the things that happens is we have copycats. It's like we have, if there's a murder, there's a copycat. If there is a, people want to take, they want to take responsibility for something they don't know anything about, and they want to create. And then they give us false hope. So when that fails, we get down in our dumps and we don't want to try again. We can't afford that anymore. So particularly, there are things that need to be done, but we have to trust one another. I do believe in investing. I believe in smart investments, and there's a thing called dumb investments. And if you're just throwing your money against the wall just to see if it sticks and it keeps falling off the wall, that's a dumb investment.
Okay, let me ask you something then. Let's say we had this entity. Let's say the name is Ivory Bay.
Okay.
And we put, and it's 20 of us, and we put $2,000 each in it, and so we got $40,000. That's movement. So let's go buy this house right here and start renovating it. That's movement. We're not doing nothing. We're not doing nothing but talking. We're giving people ideas without putting it in order. This is every day in our community.
So when are y'all gonna have to sit down?
Every day in our community.
But you know,
when
I
are y'all
agree
gonna
with
sit down and have the conversation?
Don't start you today now. The show be over. You're gonna get us put out. But no, Sabrina, but what y'all talking about, we're going to shift real quick and add this other element of the week, and that's looking at community growth. What you all are talking about is, generational growth or community growth, and how do we, and we're going to use Chatham County, we can pull in Liberty County, Bryan County. How do we leverage that? I mean, and I'll use Chatham, for example. Savannah is the flagship city. We'll just use that term.
Right.
Savannah is the municipality that has the identity that is Chatham County. But then you have Vernon, you have Port Wentworth, you have Pooler, Garden City. And, one of the things that's interesting to me, I think when I was running, somebody said, well, what's the identity of each city? And I was like, huh? But, Savannah, I guess, is the tourist city, the vacation place. Pooler is like the Sandy Springs, I guess. Garden City is industrial. But, Port Wentworth, what would y'all say is the identity for Port Wentworth? I mean, it's up and coming, and it's finally we're getting people in there that's going to lead it right. But what is that identity out there?
It would probably have to be the industrial city, because we're building things to help everything else move. They can't move without it being the right infrastructure for moving these trucks. You got 40 ships sitting out in the ocean right now, 40, waiting to be unloaded.
Wow.
Where are they going to put all that stuff at? Some people are scared of growth, but growth is sometimes painful for a little while. But because, we still worry just about us. And I ain't just talking about Black people. I'm talking about everybody in these outlying cities. They're worried only about them. They're not worried about the conditions of their children and their grandchildren later on. They're only worried about the inconvenience that's causing.
You know, I think this is the interconnectivity of the region. If we were going to think about it from a scientific viewpoint, based on what we can observe, that people are migrating. Whether we talk about the individual identity of each city, the region, if we were going to put that into the metropolitan statistical area, like the census, the area would be Savannah, Chatham, scientifically. But we know that Port Wentworth is experiencing what we would consider to be smart growth, because they're very cognizant and focused on how to develop that and to do that. While in Savannah, it's kind of like chaotic, and people are moving because they're being displaced from their homes, moving to places like Garden City, to the Savannah South Side, and into Port Wentworth, where there's population growth, which has anything to do with the schools. And we have to think about infrastructure and the flow of where do people go and how to get them amenities, which is where to shop, those shopping centers. So we are all interconnected, while they may have what we call in urban planning, urban centers. So this would be a multi-nuclei or a multiple concentric zones in each city. So we might have an identity, but right now we know what's going on in Savannah, where there's a lot of so-called smart growth from developers. It's not coming from a community standpoint to where it's helping the community. People are being displaced. So people are having to move, which now requires the cities to think about that. And at the forefront, I would say that places like Port Wentworth and Richmond Hill are thinking about that, because they're growing so fast.
This is happening. Okay, it's smart growth, but is it smart growth for the Black community? So can Black communities just start up an industry? I mean, how are they going to get the funds to do that? You're talking about how do we come together to build something? We don't have that unity to do that. And what happens in one county in this district, I have been preaching this forever, it's a trickle-down effect. It's happening in all of Southern Georgia. People see, just like Atlanta influences all of Georgia, Savannah is influencing the coast. And these people who sit in positions of authority, they see what's happening. They see what's happening in Bryan County. Bryan County was just land. Now they're about to get this huge facility, and there are other facilities that's coming into place. So down the road, away from Savannah, we have people that are like, well, we can do that too. But at the same time, these are people who are controlling the dollars. So does that make sense? No, it doesn't. Not to us, because the question comes back to the Black community. What are we going to do to be able to tap into what's happening?
Sabrina, one thing I just right.
Sabrina and Carrie, if you don't build it, then let's take Port Wentworth for instance.
Right.
If you don't build in Port Wentworth, what Black company can survive in Port Wentworth? If you don't have the traffic for them to have coming down the highway so they can come into your restaurant, so they can come into your store,
right,
how can you survive? So you must build. You got to build in order to have those people to patronize your businesses. And
I agree.
There's nobody being displaced. If you have land that are just sitting there, see what we have is sometimes you have older people who don't want to spend that other 15 minutes in traffic. They don't want to go through that construction phase.
Right.
So, and that's what the whole problem is. But this is growth. Growth sometimes is painful for a little bit. It's uncomfortable for a minute. So you have to be able to say, what does the future hold for my kids and my grandkids? This is what the growth is going to provide for them later on.
And that's where you have to be able to, there are people that you're never going to penetrate the minds of when it comes down to building for the future. They're just going to focus on now what they can get out of it, But in the meantime, we still have to have that equity to be able to create an industry that's going to help these families down the road. And where does the equity come from? So in most places, they're not creating instruments that are going to help, that are going to be tools to help build these or help the Black community build these said industries, because there's a fear that somebody's going to get a little bit more than what I have. So we have to understand we've got to build what we need to build, and we have to be able to work as a unit to do that.
Well, I just wrote an article. Let me share this. Let me share this real quick. I just wrote an article. Now, it talks about the other prong of what Julius was talking about. We've got to, as a community, invest in education. And what I mean by invest in it, when parent-teacher conference comes up, when the PTA, we've got to engage with the children in the school system and not use the school system as a babysitting place. It's not that. One of the things we talk about building, and so where is the labor going to come from? If we got a community full of high school dropouts, then we don't have a community prepared to take on the labor role, right? So when you build different stores, warehouses, what have you, we've got to train the laborers, right? So we've got to invest early in the educational process. The other part of that is, what about the mid-managers and upper managers? That's what we've got to start being taken seriously. And I mean, when I was younger, I didn't take the educational space serious at all. But the more you look at the link between education, labor, and economic development, it's a huge prong of the prong to what Julius was talking about earlier.
All these things are great, but I'm going to bring up a very controversial topic because this is an issue. It's the culture of why people are not doing it. They have to be able to trust each other. And one of my fellow grads from Savannah State brings this point up all the time first. Why is the Black community not investing in the Black community and people fighting each other and bringing up negative stereotypes embraced by white folks who use now pseudo terms or racially blind terms like tribalism? You know, the Black community's tribal. No, it's not. Every community has that element, right? It's not just one or the other. Like, I think that he makes a good point that if Jewish folks can do it, why can't Black folks learn to trust each other?
We can. I mean, this isn't impossible. This isn't an impossibility. Here's what and this is what's worked for me. I can only tell you what's worked for me, and I'm a product of my work. So, one of the things that I do is basically I look at what's the most important. And for me, what was the most important was, education was the most important because of my mom, just pushing, we're going to school, whether you like it or not. But the understanding of where my place and where my livelihood was going to come from really was based off of me working for someone for the rest of my life. I didn't want that. And my spirit literally fought back. It was rebellious against that, because when you're working for someone for the rest of your life, you don't really have a say in what you can achieve unless you're saving all of your money and you're putting it into an investment that may be a smart or a dumb move. So what I did is I just took my money and I decided I'm going to put it in this. And because in 5 years, I gave myself a timeline. This is where I wanted to be. It worked. It worked for me. It can work for everybody, but we have to stop. We have to find what's the most important thing. What is the most important thing? Education and equity. Those are the most important things. If we can get people to kind of stop leaning on the side of this happened and we can never get over that mental, and just kind of focus on building what we want to build, give ourselves a timeline, then to do that, then we can move some things. We can move some things as a unit, as a community. But right now, we're so focused on, excuse me, I don't like to have these conversations where we just keep introducing problems in our community. We already know what the problems are. How do we attack those problems? How do we attack those problems? That's the conversation I want to have. And I want to have that with people who are ready to hear some stuff that they may not be ready to hear, and build some stuff that they may not. I don't care if you have $1. Put that dollar in. If that's all you can give, no judgment here, because I understand that. But we have to be willing to commit to something. I don't want to have this conversation 5 years from now. And I want to share this.
And Sabrina, that's all we've been having is conversations and meetings. I'm meeting out. Let's start putting some action together. All these
I
meetings,
agree.
no action. I'm an action person. I don't like to just talk. I don't like to just meet you just because we're gonna have lunch. No, let's see what we're gonna do after lunch. And the
I
thing
agree.
is, in our community, we meet and we don't meet no more. We have the idea, but there's no action. We have all these people wanting to be leaders and they're not leading. So that's the problem within our community, and we got to stop it. When I come up with an idea and I say, hey, let's sit down and meet, let's see what we can do about doing this here so we can be a team when we attack something or when we advocate for something. They come and then they don't show back up. Then they when it's time to let's pool our money, everybody is deaf then. So we got to stop crying. Those of us who want to do, we need to get together and do. That's just it.
And that is absolutely true. I have to say this. I think it was maybe 8 years ago. I was invited to come to speak at the Dorchester in regards to economic development. When I walked into the building, it was a surreal moment for me. Simply because Dr. King had been there and that was his mantra, trying to move us from one position of lack to a position of betterment. And when I gave my presentation, excuse me, y'all, my voice is not 100% yet. But when I gave the presentation, it was literally like something hit me, because at the end I said, I think we were at the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's death. And that was like an anniversary date. I said, I find it so ironic that here we are 50 years later talking about the same thing that Dr. King was trying to do 50 years ago. I don't want to be here 50 years later. I don't want to be here 5 years later. We have an opportunity to do something now. And for those who don't want to give the money, everybody's not meant to go with you on the journey. I've learned that in business. Everybody's not meant to go with you on the journey, and they can't get mad at you about that. But I'm going to give you facts. Whether you like it, whether you love it, whether you hate it, that's up to you. And then based off of that, you've decided your fate.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. It's the opportunity. You're giving the
It's the
person
opportunity
to be involved and be engaged if they want to. And that's all it is. But we got to stop talking about it and start being about it. We got to stop saying, everybody, just a smart wait till April or wait till March or February after everybody filed their taxes so they can't give you no excuses and say, okay, I don't have it. No, put that money in there so you can build something later on. We got to start trusting each other. Like Carrie said, it's about trust. We don't trust nobody in this community. And we go by what used to happen, how somebody ran off with the money. But now you have people that you can put in these positions that you can trust, that can say, okay, we're going to do something with this money. We're going to build. It's a lot of people out there looking for these opportunities. We can help build companies within our own communities. We just don't, because we'd rather give our money to somewhere else. Just like here in Pope's. We have to go to get a tire change, to go to a bank, to go to sit down and eat. We got to go to Savannah, Pula, Rankin. We don't have any of those things here. We don't have a post office. We don't have a bank. We don't have nothing here. In a city of 15,000 people, you don't have it because there was no planning from 10 years ago. There was no planning from 20 years ago. There was no 20-year plan to put all this in place because you had some dummies running the place. That's what they are. That's what they were. Some dummies.
Nice.
Now you got people in who are thinking, and now when they're trying to build, you got the people who are used to always being in 1940 still trying to keep the place in 1940. We can't grow and keep our money here, especially when you got a police department that's up on the highway with a speed trap, trapping everybody that comes down the street. Those people are never going to want to stop ever again and spend their money.
So let's bring it back to.
You got to have, hold on, you got to have leadership.
Sabrina, we got 2 minutes now.
City manager, this. It's about leadership that's going to tell the police chief this. This is what you will do. This is what you will not do. And this is why we elect those people to serve. You know, but it goes all.
I think it comes down to this. There is black wealth in Atlanta. There's black wealth all over this country, and we need to quit thinking that you just need a government loan. Sabrina, I hear her name everywhere. And she's
you got
trying
money, Sabrina.
Listen,
You got money.
connecting people. She just said there's opportunity. You got to be able to get them. Quit thinking that you need to go through the government. Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So,
And
so y'all,
say this,
Sabrina.
Robert?
Sabrina, can we? Okay, this is gonna be your final thought. Hold on. So we're gonna come back next week, Sabrina. Sabrina, we need you next week. Carrie, CJ gonna show up. Sabrina, we're gonna do part 2 now. Y'all see it. The viewers will come to your house. I'm gonna put your address out in a minute. They'll come to your house if you don't show up next week. Part 2 of this great conversation. Closing comments will start with Sabrina.
I want to say this, which is gonna lead us into part 2 next week.
We
as a Black community have to understand that politics and economics are two sides of the same coins. And if you want change, real change, if you want the equity, then you have to get involved in the political spectrum. That means you have to get out and vote. And we'll talk more about that on next week, what that means for and what that looks like for the Black community.
Okay. CJ?
I just want to say, like, if you're trying, don't try, do. Like, if you have an idea, do not be afraid to go into business. One of the things that I think is awesome that I am seeing, not just in LA, but is happening in Atlanta, is that young people are buying houses together because they can't afford studios. And you know what they're doing in these houses? And these are young Black professionals who range from like 15 to whatever, like young people who are owning mansions together, making tons of money, and they're doing it from their home. They're supporting each other in their own cooperative. Y'all can do that here in Savannah. Like, there is no reason that you can't put your resources together to do it and not be afraid to like step out. The only way that you can win is by doing, just like Julia said.
All right, Julius, go ahead. Final comments, and we're gonna close out.
Okay, well, my thing is a challenge to the community. I challenge the community to stop talking and let's start working. There's a lot of talk always. Everybody's always talking. We have to start working. We have to start putting our money where our mouth is. If we're gonna do something, let's do it. Let's not meet this month, then talk about let's meet a month later. And a month later, you got people that's not wanting to be involved anymore. You got people that's going to not come to the meeting. No, you meet until you get it done. You meet until you get it done. We got so much that we can do with all these organizations, and Ivory Bay being one. Ivory Bay needs to get up off the butt and let's work. We got to stop worrying about waiting on somebody to give Ivory Bay something. We are our own army. We are who we are looking for. We are Ivory Bay. We could put the money in Ivory Bay, but you're not asking for it.
Jay-Z, you take out money, go to their foundation and get it.
You don't have the apparatus built in it to accept the money. All these things got to be done. It's been too long. We got to get moving. That's what I got.
All right. So we got Sabrina, we got CJ, and Julius next week. I think this is a great conversation. It really is enlightening and just really prompts a lot of thoughts. But I appreciate y'all being on today. Part 2, as Ivan said, to be stay tuned. But I also want to close with this, and this is one of the reasons why I absolutely love the work that Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter is doing. This is my final comment, is because she does the Kwanzaa crawl every December. And I love it because the core of what she's doing is cooperative economics, right? And so just want to give her a shout out as we close out, because I think from a leadership perspective, that's not typically a role we see city council people doing. But one thing I love about her and her two colleagues, Blakely and Bernetta, is that they think outside the box. and they think about community growth, not just about I'm an alder person. They really think about community growth. So shout out to them. And we're going to close out. We'll see y'all next Saturday, same time, same channel. Y'all take care.
like that.